Hello everyone, welcome back to the Talking Mode. I'm your host Sarah and this is
Caroline, hi guys. Good morning or good evening. So today we introduced you a brand new series again. And this series dedicated to talking about the social system or different social movements or anything related to our society. Please excuse the noise because we're literally in a jungle.
Concrete Jungle.
I hope you don't mind the sound, the noises. I will try to reduce them as much as possible. But the reason why we decided to film it was because of the lighting, and
It was actually for no reason at all. We're just
Yeah.
testing to see if
it's suitable.
Yeah.
And it's like different, right? Like usually we film in your room, but today we film in a jungle. So to start off the new series, this episode we'll be talking about the patriarchy, and also touching a little bit on the matriarchy and feminism, but we will solely focus on talking about the patriarchy and its different pros and cons and our personal experiences with the patriarchy itself.
So without further ado, let's get started.
Okay, context.
So you probably wonder why we decided to talk about the social system, right?
Mm-hmm.
So everything has a cost. Well, as of now, we're about to turn 18
Mm-hmm.
in May, and this lady
June.
is in June.
Oh my god! So close already.
Right? And so the question that we often ask these days is that, do you have a boyfriend?
Mm-hmm.
And so my mom basically told me that, okay, so that's questions that you're gonna hear from now on.
Yeah, until you get married, obviously.
Until you get married.
And then after you get married, when will you have kids?
Yeah,
And,
so, and as us girls,
mm-hmm.
we tend to receive those questions more than the ones for boys. Like, do you have a girlfriend? Or it often comes as a joke, mostly. When are you gonna, have a wife or something like that?
Yeah.
It's more comes off more like a joke. Comparing with our male counterparts, we're usually asked like about their academic pathway or their future plans.
Yes.
We're asked about our marriage.
Yeah.
Although it's an important part of the human lives, but we're starting to think how, like, we are always centered, with the whole marriage and love life,
Yeah.
and not anything
Like
other than
things.
that.
And that's one thing I often hear people talk about, especially women raising their concerns about this particular problem almost. It's because always like the women's lives are made to value marriage. I believe like marriage is important, but sometimes we are made to believe that marriage is the most important thing in our life, even though like we also have jobs, we also have our career, we also have our personal interests, but somehow those aspects are very much overlooked and tend to be ignored. And then we are always asked about marriage, and somehow and then marriage is based on the relationship with the man, and so in a sense our lives are based on a man, and that just made me question, and that just further proves our point, that not our point but like further proves the context that we're living in as a patriarchal society where the men hold more power than
The breadwinners in every family structure, and women are considered as a caregivers,
submissive, obedient, and feminine. Yeah, in every way.
it's not wrong to be feminine, but like in a way that's define us. The only trait that defines women is to be feminine.
Yeah. But then sometimes that femininity turns into toxic femininity. So I heard
we become competitors.
Yeah.
Instead of feeling compassion for each other, we tend to be competitors in terms of looking
beauty,
for beauty,
social
love
status,
life.
or even like compare who has a better love life, better marriage life, better husband and stuff.
Okay, so before we get into the discussion about the patriarchal society, we should learn what is patriarchy, right? So Caroline, what is it?
So like I mentioned, the patriarchy is basically a system where men hold more power, either political social or even like
Moral.
moral power than women, and they have more rights and more freedom to, you know, the choice that they typically make will not be judged. But when, you know, women made the same choice, women will be judged based on that. And that's my personal definition of the patriarchy, and I think that's applicable.
So yeah, basically the man is the leader and the woman just follows along.
Yeah, and that you can see within your household also, like especially in Asian culture. But I would say the patriarchy is everywhere around the world. But basically, the father figure will be the lead of the household. He is the breadwinner, but he also is the person who decides on even the slightest to even the biggest problems. And then the mother also have a say in the choice making process, but you know, obviously she has less power and less I would say influence over the decision it is made. And then the children will follow even below that.
I mean, like, so there are certain families where woman is
The
in
head.
charge of the financial, like in charge of finance for the family, but still the opinions of the father or like of the male figure basically has more say in the whatever things that they discuss in the family.
Yeah, and that obviously applies to businesses, corporations, or any other like setting or social structure. And yeah.
So, when did it become a thing? So, if I'm not mistaken, before we have matriarchy, so basically the woman holds the key role in the family. But since when patriarchy, you know,
Become a
basically
thing.
becomes a thing?
So I read so there's multiple theories and hypotheses for this, because you know, obviously it's been a long time ago, and so
It's actually before the written record.
yeah,
right?
the patriarchy was believed to exist 5,000 years ago, and even that is not a definite time mark. It's around that time, but before that, in the early age or the prehistory of humankind, we all know about the matriarchy, where the woman hold more power, and that is because women have reproductive purposes. Back then, because they lack knowledge about the reproductive system, and so the woman's ability to give birth and their ability to conceive children came as a surprise to men and other people. And so because of the mysterious feature of that thing, of that event of carrying children, then women are regarded as more highly. But then after, when people developed knowledge and awareness about the reproductive system, and they know where the origin of it, how it works, and then the men, they take back their power.
Also, this is just a theory. That we read that ever since the discovery of fire, well, men has always, even though before that women holds a key role in family, where they give birth to the children, and then there are
The gatherers,
fruit bearer and
yeah.
the gatherers, but men also holds this role, maybe only in the periphery, but like they still hunter, right? They still help the family. And so with the discovery of fire, I think this has to do with power, and it has to do with survival, since when it's more something, it's a little bit hard to really grasp the whole thing, but we think that it has something to do with whether the men they're now more suitable for something that it requires more strength.
Yes, like
Something
hunting.
Hunting and strength. Yes, you know, in compared to the women's, with differences in biological differences, and so that's when it's all started. How matriarchy disappear and becomes the patriarchal society, and it's been there for like 10,000 years until now.
Yeah, until now. Obviously, there are some like matriarchal societies left.
That's
Like
what it
in
is, yeah.
China, there's a Mosul tribe, and then in England, the rule of the Queen Elizabeth I or the second, that's also a matriarchal society, and at other parts of the world. Yeah.
But in some parts of the world where right now even in Vietnam,
Mm-hmm.
you may think that it's not a patriarchal society. It's
Mhm.
because that you don't realize you're living in one.
Yeah.
It's not like you're labeled as a like in many, actually, not just like Vietnam's, not just in South Asia. There are many even developed countries are the society is based on patriarchy, but it's too, maybe it's there, but like you cannot see it.
Yeah,
or, like,
because we
really
live in it, and so it comes as natural to us, and
becomes a norm.
yeah, so we don't typically know that we are oppressed in certain situation, we are undermined in certain situations.
But then when there are jokes, like stereotypical jokes about the gender, it started to spark this fire of curiosity as to why is it so if a man cries, basically you call him a woman, or like when a woman um, wants to further her want to climb the social ladder, or like
be a
be
leader.
a leader, they are considered as so when do you have the time for family?
Yeah.
So basically those things that really makes us question, like, to understand our sorrows and our frustrations with the society, what the society dictates the roles of women and men.
Yeah.
So,
So that's the context and the basics of the patriarchy. And so let's talk about its impacts on men, women, and obviously other genders as well.
so living in a patriarchy society definitely impacts both men and women, but like in different ways.
Obviously.
So Caroline, what do you think is the first impact to say the men themselves?
The men themselves. Okay. So like we earlier mentioned briefly, so living in a patriarchal society, we have this idealized image of men. Men need to have certain set of characteristics. They have to be economically successful. They have to be strong. They have to be muscularly built. They have to be independent. We have this set of characteristics that are required to every single man, to be honest. And that set doesn't include like being feminine, being sensitive, to have emotions. Men are not supposed to show their emotions. They aren't supposed to cry. They aren't supposed to show affection even towards their loved one. And even though that seems quite normal and seems quite the norm, like I mentioned, it's kind of wrong, to be honest, because yeah, everyone has emotions, and under no circumstances should their emotions be concealed to satisfy certain societal requirements. And that when a man shows emotion, they would be criticized, they would be ridiculed, they would be called weak, and somehow weak is not considered um, like a positive trait, and I would say desirable trait, especially in a man. And that just hinders them from expressing emotion, obviously, and that just further, I would say, reinforce this very toxic masculinity that we say, that is present in the way that, for example, in the music industry that I see. So, for example, Western men, they are built more muscularly, like I mentioned. They are taller, stronger, they are huge, but compared to Asian men, like Korean, Chinese, Vietnamese men, they are more smaller, they are not as tall, they are not as muscular. And so sometimes Asian men, especially Korean boys, Korean band boys, they are regarded as feminine. And femininity, there's nothing wrong with femininity, but somehow there's this negative connotation that is associated with femininity, especially if femininity is present in the boy. And so I often hear especially on the national broadcast, they call Korean boy bands as yeah, they use very negative words, and they are not regarded as men, to be honest. Like, they are not treated as men. And so that just toxic masculinity, and I think that regardless of how you look, we shouldn't regard femininity as negative trait, especially if that femininity is present in men, because everyone has masculinity and femininity, and so we shouldn't disregard femininity, because that means that we disregard ourselves also, because yeah.
Basically, I think that masculinity does not have to be associated with a man.
Yeah.
Just like femininity does not have to be associated
with a woman.
And in a way, I think that, just take this example, like for example, like beauty products, they're basically for everyone. So if you care about your skin, you just want to take care of them, just want to protect them from all the UV or like any other
factors.
So basically, but if there's a boy or like a man heading towards a beauty products aisles, there are various scenarios that could happen. So first, people think that that's gay. Okay,
gay.
there's definitely something wrong with his. So basically, he's not a man. I mean, that could be true, but I mean,
we don't know.
We don't know,
and
but
we
still,
we don't have the right to judge.
It's not our place to do that. Second of all beauty products are basically for men. I think there's a marked difference in price. There tends to be more expensive.
Really?
Like, and so I've heard this people reading this article about how Korean beauty products are for men are more expensive than those for women.
Because I thought otherwise.
Yeah, actually, it's actually more it makes more sense.
Yeah.
The other, but like the thing is, male beauty products is rare. Like there are not that much, and it's a little bit different from the one that we talked about, pink tags. How those that advertise to women are more. I think. Oh, actually, it's more. Actually, makes sense because remember the razor. So there's a razor for women and there's a razor for men. But the one that's marketed for women tends to be higher in price. So because razor is always considered as a male's product. And so in terms
that
of
goes the same thing for makeup products. Or even like hygienic products that are supposed to be used for women somehow. And so that's ridiculous.
So now we're gonna talk about the impacts on women. So definitely, it has both negative impacts to women, since we're living in a society that is
not designed for us.
Yeah. So basically, led by men, where we're striving for more egalitarian society. But it's also important to note that there are things such as benefits, as women's benefits in this society. I think that come to think of it, when you're living in a patriarchal society, the man is the leader and you are considered as an underclass. And so does that gives you like a privilege to be like protected by the men? Say that it's not something that you want. I mean, you can be independent, but you're living it like brought up in a society that you tend to think that way. You always it just not applies to everyone, but I think that sometimes in a particular situation, you just have this notion that okay, I'm a girl, maybe I could make my way in it easier. It depends not on all jobs, but like there are certain situations where you're benefited because you are the underclass.
Like lady first, the phrase lady first, and then how we always enter, certain building first, and then how the men always hold the door for the woman behind him. So I agree, but those
are very little.
Small, yeah.
And sometimes, and of course, that's not what's happened in the job industry. Basically, for example, in line for promotion, men's always has a better they're dealt with a better card basically. Because people believe that men's more concentrated in their work and more focused they don't have to care much because they're breadwinner of the family, and the taking care of children is more like for the caregivers, which are the women, and they tend to think that men just had it more, just
Had it easier.
had it easier. And I don't know if there's something to do with like the retiring age for men and women differs.
Yeah.
It could be fair, like when it's different, but I don't know if any other factors takes in. Like, what do you think? Say, man has a longer like working age than women, and
Yeah.
already taken in the factor that women has that duty to give birth. But
Obviously.
in a society, I think even though women holds the rights to reproduction, but doesn't that exempt them from like longer working time even when they decided not to have kids? Like, what do you think about
Yeah,
that?
that is not provided for women. And also the work conditions. I heard it somewhere that like if the work conditions are not personalized towards men and women, if the work condition for men are not different from those for women, then that is considered gender inequality. Because even though we are striving to fight for equality for both gender, or like any gender in general, that doesn't means that women and men should be working in the same work condition, because our biological makeup are very different. Obviously, there are multiple studies that are proof that women can be weaker. We cannot do heavier labor jobs, and that just that because of the biological makeup, we should be given equity. And when we are given equity, that will be considered equality. Another interesting point that I thought of is instead of when women live in a patriarchal society, instead of trying to embrace their femininity, they chose to come along with the masculinity, because nowadays more women are trying to be independent at work. They are trying to achieve financial independence, even though that there's nothing wrong with that, but I just think that sometimes we got too caught up in the race of chasing masculinity, that we tend to become overly independent, and we become not willing to receive love and affection. And I don't know if you can agree with me on this, but I think that the nature of woman is femininity, and that we are in a sense innate at nature. We are feminine individuals, and that by chasing masculinity in the workplace, or chasing masculinity in pursuit of trying to achieve a higher societal economic status, because we are living in a patriarchal society, that just disregards our nature in a sense. Now that because of the toxic masculinity, because of the societal notion that we need to be independent, even though there's nothing wrong with independence again, but sometimes we just forget about our nature, that which is femininity, and that's the reason why I see like many girls nowadays, they are independent, but at the same time they are not willing to get married anymore. They tend to stay single forever, and even though staying single there's nothing wrong, but at the same time it just poses this initial threat even to me. And we can probably see from the statistic, I don't like the geography teacher in grade 10, he told us that by the end of 2030, there will be shortage of women, and then more than like couple millions men would be single, that they would not have the chance to marry their wives, and so that's just a consequences of living in a patriarchal society.
I just think that from what you talk about the industry, like the working industry, I mean, just think about it, how we're in an environment where our competitors, we have to chase the men for in order to
gain a
reach to
position,
to keep pace with them.
Yeah.
That's even, I mean, you're not just focused on the work that you do. You have to do it better, like triple uh, times that the man does, or even other um, women. I mean, there's an inner fight between the women themselves and the fight between the women and the men. So I think that it's like a chasing kind of like situation where there's no end. And by the time you're probably exhausted, from all that thing, and just give in. And so the patriarchy lives on. So that is, I think, just something simple like that. Think about in a work environment. Maybe not now. Maybe we're not experienced right now. But we've read, stories of people how they have to fight within within themselves, within their women's and the male counterparts. Whereas the men, if they want to thrive, they basically needs to focus on their work, and their enemies only is the men. They don't really consider,
women as their enemies.
I think also living in a patriarchal society, women's basically dictated not to have like sexual relationship outside. They have to be very loyal to. I mean, it's a good trait that everyone should have, to be loyal to their partner. But the different in gender views between a woman that has a love life that is different from the ideal the ideal one. Like, women should always have its family and children and stuff, but like there's certain there are women that don't fall into that categories, and so they are considered different from the society, or from they're basically criticized. But if that same thing happens to a man, that wouldn't be a problem. Or, I mean, nobody would even raise a voice about that. So you may heard about reported cases about how women are being raped, but then some of them, it's just a small number actually, because some of them, they're being raped. But I think when we watched that movie, watched that video about how there's this speaker, she said about in a kind of like rape situation, the victim is equally criticized as the criminal, right? So and just some of them don't even speak up anymore because they feel the shame. They're just shamed that it's imposed upon them.
And also another problem with the patriarchy goes the same for the men, because not only women are raped, but also men are raped. Men are sexually assaulted, but they obviously don't speak up because society just doesn't give them a chance to speak up. And that just, I don't know, because the word rape is so much associated with women that when it comes to the men being raped, it is not a big deal. I say,
So see, that's another impact on the patriarchal society on men, because things happen to them too, but they're easily ignored
because men are considered stronger.
And sometimes, even if that happens to men, they just basically think that there's seriously something wrong, like why you couldn't, fight a woman, or fight back, or things like that. And also, how about in the sector, like in science or in any other in STEM, basically
male-dominated field?
So, the statistics show that women garner less recognition for their contributions.
Obviously.
They receive just 2.77% of the Nobel Prizes for science.
There's one invention. I'm not sure if it's this is, but like I watched a TikTok saying that the Wi-Fi that we use to connect internet is actually invented by women. But obviously on paper it is invented by a male, and so that's just a way that the patriarchy is undermining women's contribution to science, because even though that woman, she discovered the use of Wi-Fi and all of the things related to it, her contribution obviously went unnoticed until a man discovered the same thing, and then he was awarded prizes and stuff, recognition and stuff. And so that's just how society works.
I just think that the more we talked about it, I feel like there's what's the need for patriarchy society? It's that men feels like women is a threat to them because we're strong. We hold we like, basically I think we're very strong and we have all the capacities to move forward without the men. And I think in a way it's kind of acts as a threat.
Yes,
because
obviously, especially for two like misogynistic men.
Like because two men, they think okay, so women's really good at caregiving, so now they're also good at STEMs, science, sports, or whatever. So basically, they're more superior.
Yeah.
But
I think there could be a world where any gender has equal power, but the misogynistic men, they don't want to give up the slightest bit of their privilege, and so that's why I think that the patriarchy is still a problem, because obviously there can be a world where anyone has the same rights, the equal power, but now the men, they has ultimate power, but they are not willing to give up the slightest bit of that ultimate power to become less ultimate. So yeah,
what to do about it? After we're discussing about the impacts of patriarchal society on both men and women, and probably other genders too. So what to do about it? I think as of now, the little thing that we could do is to really question like whether our roles in the society don't be conformed to any specific stereotypical mold that the society dictates on us.
Okay, given all things that we have said, I think that the best thing that we can do is to really try to reflect on ourselves, because obviously, like your friend said, like Sarah said, reflect on the daily behaviors and to really see if they stem from the patriarchal or they stem from misogyny, because the problem with the patriarchy is that it has become the norm for us, that we sometimes don't really think that is wrong, or that certain joke is wrong, or that certain behavior, or even a sentence that we subconsciously
Accept.
is wrong. But when you really compare the role, the power, the influence between men and women that they have either in their personal life or in their professional life, you can really see the problem, because it's not invisible. When me and Sarah, it's recent that we discover that the patriarchy is bad. It's not that we have discovered this for a long time. It's recent that we have realized some of the differences in the ways that we are treated compared to our male counterparts, and that just sparked curiosity, but also that just made me question and doubt, and you really fear the life that is out there, when we are no longer living under our parents' protection, we are no longer living in a safe environment where we are accustomed to, and that the fact that women constantly feel frightened and afraid, when we work home at night, and the fear that we carry on a day-to-day basis, to be questioning that whether we have the rights, whether we are treated equally, is evidence, is proof that the patriarchy is doing us a disservice. And I think that you do not have to be an activist. You don't have to attend protests, or you do not have to sign petitions or anything. I think that the single thing that you can do is try to better yourself and really question and reflect on your behaviors and see if they are right, and if they are doing other people justice, and treating them equally as you are, especially if you're a man. Really, like, please recognize that you have privilege, and do not disregard that privilege of yours, because living in a patriarchy society means that you have more privilege than us. Yes.
I think that, well, it's easier said than done.
Obviously,
for-
everything is.
Well, even as of now, I am still on my path of, really discovering what's my role in society, how,
Yeah.
because I'm only 17, and as I think that the parts, I don't really have a really experience and have been treated differently
Mhm.
until now. Maybe probably in the future. So I'm still on that path to see what the world's gonna offer me and how I will fight for fight for my rights. But I think that I mean, even now, given this opportunity to live in a world where I got access to all the materials talking about patriarchy, listening to people sharing their stories on how they've been treated, I get that for myself. But I know for a lot of people, they don't have that opportunity to really learn, to discover that parts, to learn about their sorrows and frustrations, if there's any, or if it's ever occurred to them that they somehow are not privileged as others. So I just want to say that if you're watching this video and you feel like you're at a position to do better things, to really to really learn about this, to make a difference, then it's really important that you're doing not just for yourself, but you help others too, to achieve it, to show compassion, to really, if there's people make a joke about stereotypical thing, you can question them and explain it why they have it, or like helps others to realize that they are not being treated fairly.
Mhm.
I think that is also something you can do. It doesn't have to be like Caroline said. It doesn't have to be in a protest. You don't have to hold a card saying that I fight for feminism.
Mhm.
I fight for equal rights. It doesn't have to be something, so big, so clear like that. It just started from the mindset and helped
Everything
others.
is.
So I think that's a wrap on this video.
Yes.
And we hope that you find this video helpful. If there's
do.
any opinions or anything you'd like to share, drop it down in the comment below, and we're gonna address it probably in our next video.
Yes.
And so stay tuned
Stay safe.
and
Stay awesome.
Bye.
Bye.